rocked. Hello, everyone out there. This is Michael Naylor coming to you from South Portland, Maine, and I have the deep pleasure to be with a beloved Type 3 and dear friend, Judith, who's going to teach you how to walk through the door of enlightenment at some point or another and then back out again. But yeah, so thank you so much for being here, and just would love to hear how you learned about the Enneagram.
Thanks, Michael. And it's just great fun to be on Zoom with you.
Yeah, it is. It's great.
So I actually heard about the Enneagram simultaneously from two people. The first was from someone who's taking one of our workshops on leadership. And she came up to me afterwards and just said, have you heard about the Enneagram? And I've started learning about it, and I think you might really like to hear about it and learn about it. So that perked my curiosity. And the second was a business partner who called to tell me that we had been approached by the Enneagram Institute to help them construct the first workshop for business, targeted specifically at business. And I guess we had ongoing conversations with them over months after doing some of the trainings.
Oh.
So yeah, so they both sort of happened at once. And if you go left or right, you're running into the Enneagram, you better pay attention, right? So the funny thing for me was I took the test, and at that point it was the 144 question test, and got my scores. And yeah, I had a lot of trouble figuring out what type. So I just put different hats on, sort of walked around, and then would take the hat off because it just wasn't a fit. The last one I came to was the 3, because I had been avoiding the 3. When I read the descriptions, I remember rebelling against the phrase, care a lot about what others think. And I just felt like that would be shameful, to care so much about what people think. So I was just rejecting that idea with all my force. And when I went back and read the description again as the final one that was in contention, I just thought, oh my God, this thing is running me so much. Even my selection of Enneagram types. So at that point, I surrendered. And it was actually, just powerful to see how deeply that was ingrained in me. And I thought back, wow, this has been running a lot, right? Unconsciously.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think just even finding my type was incredibly powerful.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I can relate to that very strongly. So after discovering, there's a particular pattern that inhabits my consciousness, which I didn't sign up for when I was 4 or 5, but there it is, and I bump into it, or it takes me on a ride. So what has been, what has been your experience of noticing your 3 patterns, and where have you noticed strengths and weaknesses, and what you like and don't like? I mean, what's that been like for you?
Well, clearly the 3 being achievement oriented is a profound trend line in my life. To be able, as a young person, pick more strawberries than anyone else in the family. So I alone could escape doing the dishes. Yeah. So that very, very strong trend line. And I really thought everyone was like that, just sometimes not so good at it.
Yeah.
But I think the Enneagram has really been helpful because that it looks at motivation, the motivation why we do things.
Mm-hmm.
So why achievement, why I go for that approval and applause, and then that other people have different motivations. So I would say that really opened my eyes.
Yeah.
But the second thing was, you know, the disintegration to the 9 pattern, right? So the withdrawal, if I can smell down the road and around the corner that there's disapproval, and I can smell that way.
Could feel it coming, huh?
Then, you know, I will leave you before you leave me. You know, that just, I can feel that decision show up. So that showed up young for me too, and in the small town that I grew up in. So yeah, I could see both of those things really, really clearly.
Well, when you know, Risa Hudson uses the achiever, the success-oriented, pragmatic type, what does that bring up for you?
Well, clearly, I am willing to cut corners to get to the goal. You know, so that's pragmatism in a good way, right? So I'm not going to worry about some small detail that I don't believe will make a big difference.
Yeah.
The downside of that is there can be a manipulation there, or there can be a sneakiness about it. So it's not really out there with full intentionality, but it's more like, if I have to explain all of this, it is just such a time suck. So force ahead, out of my way, we're going to the goal.
Uh-huh.
So that has been a huge wake up call, and something I've worked really hard at appreciating, that other people don't work the same way I do. They don't think the same way I do. They have other ideas. They see it differently. And so when I first started practicing slowing down to make room, you know, it was physically painful. It hurt. And I remember my whole body just suffering, you know, at the indignity of not being able to move fast. But I learned so much from that. And one of the things I learned to discern is the difference between my ego wanting to go and my intuition knowing without knowing how I know.
Yeah.
And so that's been helpful, that I didn't have to always give up the sense of clarity, but just the ego driven part of it was helpful to surrender to. And I'm not perfect at it, but to consciously let go of control and invite other people to own things has been something I'm really proud of seeking consciously to practice.
Yeah, that sounds, it's such a powerful discernment between what's the machine of my type 3, which is to go forward at lightning speed, and you know, if you're with me, great. If not, see you later. Off I go, right? And yeah, just, and that laser, I mean, that's a gift, is I can laser focus, and then,
Yeah.
but the people around me may not be as cheered up as I am.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I remember my family coming in, you know, and saying, you probably don't even remember me coming into the office 2 hours ago and asking if I could talk to you.
I don't.
I mean, I'm laughing. It's not necessarily funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, there would just be this shut the world out. Yeah.
Yeah, and then that whole, like you mentioned, the you know, the intuitive wisdom, having contact with that,
Yeah.
you know, and being able to have that be a guidance and a clarity that was probably less compelled to drive forward. There's more of a flow with what's going on. I don't. How do you experience it?
Yeah, I experience it as a very distinct difference between unconsciously in my personality.
Yeah.
And connection with inner wisdom.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I guess I would say, and gratitude for knowing I'm more than my personality. You know, that's the suit I wear. That's what other people often see but knowing that there's more to me than my mind, my emotions, my body, that there's another part of me.
Yeah.
And that connection is such a gift to that essence or spirit or whatever label helps you realize that this is a source of intelligence and wisdom. Yeah.
Well, that's such a not an easy thing for people to come to, usually with prerequisite suffering and confusions and a passion. But when that you start to have that experience of essence, or in our school we call it real I, real self, that it's you start to experience more freedom to just be in the moment and not be thrown around by my patterns as much, which is such a great gift. And so I just wonder for you, one of we talk about sort of the teaching of the type 3 is the type 3 of the heart type sometimes is farthest away from their heart, or their heart is kind of a speed bump. I can jump over it and then go forward, and that's putting it very simplistically. But what's been your evolution in terms of sensing your heart and being with your heart?
Yeah, I think definitely. And again, there's a pragmatism to it because emotions are messy. They take time. And so there's but definitely neck up until mid 30s, without a doubt. Just no appreciation of who I was beyond really the mind and the body. And I remember being with a friend who offered me a cup of tea, and I said, I don't care for one, thanks. And she, being a type 2, said, oh, but it's no trouble. I'd be glad to get you a cup of tea. And so this time, a little bit more forcefully, I declined, just to emphasize and underline, not have to repeat again. But she did, being a brilliant type 2. Knew what I needed more than I needed. I knew. And a third time said, but I'm going to make myself one, and it really would be my pleasure to make one for you. And I just uncorked a bit there and said in my most clear voice that I do not want a cup of tea. And she said, well, are you angry? And I said, I'm not angry. I just don't want a cup of tea. Right? So I thought back about that a month or two later, and I thought, what if that was anger? Because I have been feeling those feelings. I've been having that sort of inside of me for a while. And what if that actually is anger, right? So that was my first kind of crack in the vase, if you will, of on the emotional awareness journey. And at that time, I came across this powerful tool called the Sedona method. I don't know, have you heard of that, Michael? It's used in prisons a lot. Come across that?
I've heard of it, but say a little bit about it, because it's important.
Well, it gives you a framework for connecting thoughts to language, like irritation or anger, to feelings and behaviors, right? So that's how they teach individuals in prisons empathy, reconnect the word anger with the way the body feels, right? So I tried some of the techniques in this framework, and it was very helpful. And before you know it, I could tell the difference between irritation and anger, and frustration. They all felt a little different in my body.
Oh, awesome.
And so that was good. That was really good. And the thing is, it's a really pretty easy thing to connect the wires, reconnect them, right? And so then all of a sudden you have your body helps you, with what you're feeling. Your body clarifies it for your mind. And then once you get the language down, it's, that's irritation for me, that's frustration for me, and so forth. That it's then there. So that was very helpful. I forget where we went, how we got started on this.
Well, I don't know. So I'll just be back here with my next thought because I lost the trail. So what occurs to me is you said that, and all the work with Diamond Heart and Liver G-Force is.
Oh, we're talking about the heart center, reconnecting with it. Yeah.
Right, and how it can be a speed bump, and and sometimes I've noticed sometimes with threes, like when they get in trouble with relationships, I'll say, well, what's the complaint? Well, my wife says I'm never home. Well, is that true? Yes, it is true. I'm on my third marriage, and I said, well, what's your wife say? Well, she says I'm never home. I'm like gone at work, and I can't feel the need for connection. I feel the passion for work. It's like, and so one of the conversations is that for some threes, access to the heart and feeling my need for people or my love for people it is one of the growth edges, and allowing the heart to come open and feel, and threes are are heart centered, and even when they've got the laser light going, there's still a big heart there. So I just wondered what you experience in terms of your heart and being able to sense it and feel it, if that's been what that's been like for you.
Well, I can definitely relate to this feeling of closing it down, shutting it off, and hardening it up, for practical reasons, if you will, in my framework, right?
Yeah.
Not that was conscious, but contributed to the ease of focus, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, one of the things I did before I met Robert was I did a program called Insight. And one of the goals of Insight is to open the heart. And, at my resistant best, I was poo-pooing it all the way, but managed to get co-opted by a circle of friends who were intervening. And I just remember a moment in the workshop where I was in touch for the first time of intense vulnerability and not being able to control what people thought of me and not being able to sort of close down the heart and keep it all together, right? And it just felt like shattering into a million pieces and not even knowing who I was. It was very deep and very profound. And I guess in some ways I'm fortunate to have that kind of a breakthrough. I just saw life differently after that. Although it was painful and scary, it was not as painful and scary after that. And then I met Robert, so who knows?
Yeah. Door opened and there was Robert.
But in the other thing, I did the program at University of Santa Monica, the Masters in Spiritual Psychology, and that framework is that underneath these feelings of fear and vulnerability are judgments, self-judgments that we carry against ourselves. And there are patterns, of course, connected to the Enneagram. And so the tools to when those emotions would flare, or when I could feel myself shutting down and wanting to withdraw, or so forth, to go at it from a willingness of taking a look at the underlying self-judgment. And, themes of not lovable, of not safe, of not valued, not worthy. Yeah, just working those just deep judgments. Just accepting that there's some of that there, and being willing to do the work to release. And so that's been helpful, as really being around people who are open and loving, as you are, and as other people I try to bring into my circle are, and just watching them and being reminded of how important relationships are. Yeah, and
Yeah.
trying to just keep on that learning journey, I would say.
Yeah. Well, I've had the pleasure of witnessing your skillfulness in doing that with people. It's quite
Yeah.
admirable and powerful, and welcoming people as they are. So you've done awesome work. So the other thing that sometimes we talk about is that a wake-up call for the three is that under stress, I work harder. I go into overdrive, and I've seen threes do that. Like stressful, there's problems. I hype up the work, and boom, off I go. And they say that I have an adrenaline high from it. I go longer than anybody around me. They're all falling asleep, and
Yeah.
I'm like, but there's that.
Yeah.
It's like an addiction almost
Yes.
that I can
Yes.
count on.
Yes.
So yeah, what's been your experience of over?
Yeah, I mean, I relate totally to the adrenaline and the addiction to adrenaline and the buzz one gets from just, seeing it happen. Absolutely. And for me, it's still difficult to stop at the early signal that I'm going too far.
Yeah.
Right. So the best I seem to be able to do is make life work balance strategies.
Mm-hmm.
Here, I had a hard time doing that when I was paying college and saving for retirement, and and there was always desire to hit that goal, the number where I could be financially secure, right? And so that it was hard, definitely. I was not successful yet at really pulling back in until I would just get exhausted.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I didn't crack that nut.
Yeah. Well, that's
But I have been successful withdrawing from working now when I feel some financial security, and so that's that I'm grateful for. And then I will look for someplace to invest my energy in a service way.
Mm-hmm.
And then I will practice not going too far.
Well,
So hopefully I can report back here sometime down the road that I've got it.
well, as you explained it in other threes, it's like a compelling force that comes alive in me, and it's like, whoa, here there's something magnetic.
It's an urge.
Yeah, an urge.
Definitely an urge.
Yeah.
And it just feels good to be productive and accomplishing things, and there's this kind of a flow to it that's just exhilarating.
Yeah.
And then it's not, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
and then it's a burden and complaining and whining and all the rest, right? And then we're horizontal on the couch.
Going into 9 mode and
yes, going into full 9 mode. Yes. So yeah, I would say in achieving financial security mode, I didn't crack the nut, but I have hopes of yet cracking it. Right now, I'm just doing a lot of self-care and doing a little work, not much.
Oh.
Just mentoring some of my coaches and doing a few things for people that I've worked with for a long, but have really, since the whole summer, just really enjoyed the summer. It's been great.
That's awesome. Sounds healthy to me. Yeah. So the other thing I would just ask about is, one of the things that we talk about, sort of the basic fear or secondary fear of the three. The core fear is of being a nobody, a loser, and feeling that I have no preciousness, no value. That's sort of the deeper level. And then the next level is something around disappointing people that I really wish for their admiration. And that, and when those fears get triggered, that often launches the three mechanism into service. And I've talked with some threes who would just say, when I first started slowing down, the overriding feeling I got was I was being lazy. There was work to do. I could do it better than most people. So what am I doing? Slowing down and relaxing. But then underneath it would come a feeling of emptiness, that I was a fraud, that I had nothing, internal that allowed me to feel value. And so the way I, learned to feel value was I could go out there and conquer the world in whatever form. And because I was gifted as a three and good and pragmatic and success oriented, I could do it. But at the core of it was this fear of having no value. And so I just wondered how you've worked with that, or if you've noticed that, or what's true for you now.
Yeah, I have noticed that a little bit. I would say it's not, for me, not being valued, not having my work valued, in the past has been akin to not valuing me. Yeah, and that can be tough. But I have learned to work with that from the point of view of separating, my value as a human being, which just is, and the value of what I do, which can always get better.
Mm-hmm.
And so for many people, and even the threes I coach, it's like an infinity sign where they're linked together.
Mm-hmm.
My value comes from the value of what I do.
Yeah.
But when we treat them as two things, and I encourage people to look at a baby and see their value, right? And they're not doing anything to earn it.
Yeah.
It's just, we see their essence, we see them, and they have value just because they exist, right? And we see that so clearly in infants, right? Which is, we love that. And so, and then the value of what I do, realizing that can always get better, because there's wins and learnings, so some things worked great, and some things could go even better, and just sort of being willing to look at how they could go better makes you open to feedback and open to learning and all the rest of it. So to sort of de-link the two as a conscious strategy. Yeah.
Well, that's, the thing I often hear from threes like yourself is this attention on it could be better. And I just automatically see what can be better. So, okay, let's go do that. And then, of course, there's something after that too. And for some threes, I've noticed that they really can get hooked into the striving mode. Always, and then noticing are my neighbors getting ahead of me, and so it feeds into another sort of worry about being defeated, and somehow, okay, learning to sit and meditate. If I put it in the framework that you'll strive better and clearer if you learn how to meditate, they might do it, but probably not, because I'll be sitting still too long. But what has been your relationship with learning to come still, and do you have a meditation practice of some sort? Or
it's very important. Yeah, it's very important that connection, where we stop and are quiet and connect with our essence, and just sort of really nurture that relationship, if you will.
Yeah.
That's we were adopting a girl from China, and I ran into all kinds of hurdles after hurdle. And I thought if I just pushed hard enough and just strove hard enough and just rattled the cages, long enough, that I could make this happen, right? And in one of my meditations, she was right here saying to me, I'm willing to stay here as long as it takes for you to let go.
Wow, that's quite a guidance.
It was very profound.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I all I remember thinking is, I surrender. And then it just seemed like everything happened, right?
Wow.
Who knows? But that was good. But I definitely can relate to, wanting other people to see the value of the work I do, and, striving for that, if it's not apparent, striving for that, I can connect with that. But I think not as much, maybe, for me, it was more striving to feel safe, in a financial way.
I see. Yeah.
I think that was more of where the pressure for me came. Because I would just move on. You don't see my value, the guy behind you will, And, in terms of striving to be better and better, for me, it's more like being willing to hear feedback that it could be better, So being open to that rather than rigid around how great it was, right?
Yeah.
So
well, it sounds like you have
those things are more a little bit for me. There's subtle variations, let's say.
Yeah. Well, you have an opportunity to be with a lot of different types. What's your sort of strategy with the threes? Yeah, is there any? I know everybody's probably at a different level of health, but any themes that pop up for you as you're working with the beloved threes?
Yeah, well, it definitely, I appeal to their threeness. I get them very clear on their goal. And I talk to them about just around the corner for them is collaborative leadership. Their ability to be successful so far depends on their skills and their competencies and how they individually perform. But just around the road or over the hill is another step in their leadership, and that is collaborate with people who work with them and for them, but this collaborative style of leadership. So I make sure that their goal has something to it that's going to allow me to kind of pull some windows open in the area of collaboration versus competitiveness. And the third thing is really separating who I am from what I do. I mean, that is just absolutely fundamental that they get that. It's really hard for a three to get that. You could say it and they kind of go, that's going to be hard for me. And it's like, I know.
I've got experience there.
So wired. I am what I do, right?
Yeah.
So, but when that starts to separate and they start to be able to see and value who they are, not connected to what they do, and then what they do because they can. That's power. That's helpful. Very helpful for the three. And then, like you said, the meditation, being able to see that they're more than their personality.
Yeah, I was just going to ask about that because that's certainly been a doorway for me for discovering that inner essence core, that substantiality that's different than my outer pattern. But it's I know with the threes I work with, there's like that sounds like good stuff, but not for me today. I don't. Is that true? I said, well, you gotta try it and see and have your own experience of it. Maybe sitting meditation. Some threes don't. That's not where they start. And maybe they start with yoga or tai chi or running.
Exactly.
Or some rhythm.
Walk in nature.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the other thing.
Okay. I had one person I was going to say who spent years sort of trying to find the essence, right? And then one day they texted me from someplace in Thailand. I got it. So I guess they just had to go to Thailand.
You never know. You never know.
That was great.
Yeah,
it takes as long as it takes,
It does. And I remember one of my teachers said, Michael, if you find that picking up stones on the beach wakes you up, keep picking up the damn stone. All right, I'm listening, right?
Exactly.
Well, there's one of the stories we often hear or tell about the three is because depending on their childhood, etc., that they can be wired. They want approval, and especially mom and dad, and that there can be a tendency sometimes to lose contact with their own heart's desire, and they're so good at morphing into others and then carrying them forward and succeeding but that they might not take their heart along with them. They can lose contact with their heart's desire. And I just wondered what your experience has been with that sort of story about the three.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to what you were saying. I haven't thought of it in exactly that way, but it's interesting to hear you talk about that, Michael. I would say in the beginning, I had no idea about my heart's desire, and I just kind of stumbled my way forward into jobs that allowed me to perform well, right? And when I got acknowledged as one of the best dishwashers the nursing home had ever had, I felt good. I felt good. Maybe
Huh.
being the best dishwasher on the planet is my heart's desire, Who needs college? Right.
Yeah.
And and I think just kind of stumbling my way forward into what it was I wanted to do. It was a pretty windy road until I got to where I really saw that this work in developing teams so that they perform really, really well, and I got that leaning down and picking a flower, that just came in
Oh,
really strongly. And I had been asking, for that clarity. So that seemed to come into me.
yeah.
And I'm up against that a little bit now. I love the work my company does, and I feel it's ready for me personally to make a shift. And I have been curious that hasn't been apparent to me, left, right, north, south,
Yeah.
and so I just decided to kind of let that be okay for right now, because I needed just some time to, just kind of settle into my new pace.
Yeah.
So, but it hasn't presented itself in a way that I see it clearly. And so I'm curious about that, but I'm okay with it. But at some point, I hope it crystallizes, because I like operating with that kind of clarity.
Well,
Yeah.
I think the universe has your back. It'll probably come through when it's time. Picking
Yeah.
up another flower, and there it
Yeah.
is. So yeah. So you mentioned this thing around moving towards teams, and in Enneagram, if we look at the three moving to six, there's often a story as the three matures and they, do what really brings them that sense of success, that they then get inspired to inspire others and become and start to feel the importance of the team and working as a team member and really in a sense not needing to be the top dog all the time, but just getting great joy out of bringing the best. That's the whole John Lennon song, "We all shine on." Everybody shines here, and it seems like threes. That's a direction that they go. I can think of a number of people, Oprah Winfrey being one, and how she's become more collaborative and just generous with whatever she has. But it sounds like that's been a real movement for you, this sense of, and I wonder if you just say a little bit about because I think you used that archetype of the three musketeers and all for one for all, which is the sixth territory, right? We're only as strong as our team. So I just wondered if you'd say a little bit about your passion for that and what your learning curve has been. And it sounds like you really try to help your threes begin to start to develop that kind of wisdom.
Yeah, and really all types.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because the six is often a great leader, but they're hesitant,
Mm-hmm.
But if they can move past their fears, they're very low ego. So it's never me, it's always we.
Yeah.
And the eight, nothing can stop them. They're very powerful. They can create a lot of safety, but they can have their traps. So I think the greatest joy for me has been working with teams of people who are all based around the world, living in different cultures, from Japan to Russia to China to Brazil, France, Germany, you name it, right? And a situation where they've been handed an aggressive goal and they don't even, maybe they know each other, maybe they don't know each other, but they certainly don't know how to go at that because they've come from hierarchical frameworks. And none of them are in charge of any of them, right? So they have to figure out how we're going to do this, and then to be invited along that journey with them is just so rewarding. It's absolutely the most rewarding work I've ever done. And I think that's work we've been doing now for about 15 years. And yeah, and that's just great. And it's the way the world's going, right? To be able to work like that.
Yeah.
So, but I think it takes a lot from every type. And we do use the Enneagram. We do have everyone understand their type. We do have them learn how to talk to each other and give feedback and relate to different motivations, and all of that is part of it. And the spiral dynamics is another concept about how people's consciousness evolve, and that's helpful too. So a lot of these different kinds of, I mean, there's nothing quite as great as the Enneagram. It really is very powerful.
Yeah.
But a lot of these other ideas can make the thing move, and we have our formula. And like I like to say, it's a science, it's learnable, it's repeatable, and it has a predictable outcome. And that's a definition of science.
That's the three formula right there.
There you go.
So funny. Well, you know, we're in kind of peculiar times here on planet Earth, I've noticed. And you know, everything's shaking and baking, and you know, I can remember, you know, one of the things that Eckhart Tolle talked about back in 2000 is that humanity is in a place where we're going to see the best and the worst, and you've got to see the worst to be motivated to transform it. So it's going to come out as it is. And I thought, well, that's a great idea. Then it started happening. I'm going, this isn't such a good idea. But it's certainly most of the spiritual traditions have predicted this time as an opportunity for real transformation. So as a type 3 who loves a good goal, like where are you sitting with all of this interesting conflicting stuff that's occurring on the planet?
Well, I mean, I can definitely get caught up in, oh my God, did you see that? You know,
every day. It's like a TV show that never fails to let you down.
Right, exactly, really. How do they keep coming up with the new plot?
New material.
You think there's nothing left.
No.
But you know, from going back to spiral dynamics, which
Yeah.
again is a really interesting idea. Chaos is what we experience. Yellow, the meme of yellow chaos.
It's sure it's not gold.
Is
gold hair.
Yeah, no, it's chaos. We'll call it gold, but it's chaos.
Yeah, it
is what we experienced before. You know, the spiral dynamics is an oscillation between me and we, right? So every time we bump up against problems we can't solve, we oscillate back, right? So the blue meme, like Europe, some of the European countries and some of the Asian countries are very rule-based, very rule-driven, right? Talk about what that is an oscillation from, but think Attila the Hun, right? And then you think of the US as an orange meme, you know, it's like, don't fence me in, you know, pull myself up on my bootstraps, anything is possible, right? Me, more, right? So So is this, so that's an oscillation from what's best for society overall, all these rules, right, to what's best for me. You know, it's what we think of as an oscillation. But an orange meme can solve problems that a blue meme can't. And so as each oscillation happens, we expand what problems we can solve. And so in working with teams, we have to learn how to respect people who are coming from different levels of consciousness, even, you know, the brutal consciousness. But where we go after the yellow meme, which is chaos, and by the way, that's the first meme, we can look back on all the other memes and see the value they contribute. Then we have turquoise, which is one earth. So on my good days, you know, I'm in a place of, this is us in chaos getting to turquoise.
Yeah.
Getting to one earth.
Yeah.
That we love and protect.
Yeah.
So, and I think the youth are the future. You know, they're the ones who have that possibility to get us there. Yeah.
Well, you know, I have actually a very deep faith that we will get there. I don't, it's just something in my soul just says yes. And I'm getting shivers as I say it, but it's palpable. And I don't have the story for it in my head center, but in my core, my heart, you know, I've experienced it when I'm teaching and with people, and as they unfold, and this beautiful soul, and there's just a sense of, yes, this energy that comes forth is indestructible. And I have faith in it. So anyway, I just need to remind myself when I'm going, oh my God, Game of Trump season 4, we may have 8 of these seasons. What's going on? But you know, if I go inside, there's something, a different story, I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, for you, it sounds like your heart's desire really has been opened up with the team building and that kind of, I can feel your heart is it's like there's joy there and you love it. And so, like, what else is, you know, what else brings you joy?
Well, I think most often right now, a lot of things are bringing me joy. The Rails to Trails biking in Western New Jersey is fabulous.
Awesome.
I'm learning to operate a boat. I was out this morning on the lake at dawn kayaking, and just being able to haul the kayak up onto the dock is, you know, is something I'm strong enough to do now and relish that. So I love all of those things, and I'm really taking a lot of pleasure from life this summer. So that's been good. But in terms of, you know, work, not work hard, but my work, I've been, you know, thinking about where I was when I was a high school student, and that sort of magical journey of financial independence, if you will, you know, just being able to pay for college and break out of a life of limitation, which is how I grew up, you know, financial limitation and mindset, you know, literally being taught that people who skied were probably stuck up and no fun at all. And boy, that'll cure your jealousy. It's much more fun to slide down an inner tube. Yeah. So, and you know, I think there's probably some opportunities. This area that we've moved to is not a very wealthy area, and I think there's probably some organizations, people that are looking at supporting young people into, not necessarily that everybody has to go to college, but just sort of into the liberty of seeing all of the choices that there possibly are. And so some way I could maybe lean in and offer some support to that, particularly, you know, for women, for girls in my case,
Mm.
just to give back. In my case, it was a fluke. Two of my best high school friends were both engaged at 17. So the guidance counselor was trying to get them to wake up and show them Oregon State University as another option. And they invited me to go along. And so, that started opening up, well, gee, maybe I could do this,
Oh,
they're going to get married, but maybe I could do it.
oh.
So there's probably something that is an opportunity in that area for me. That's the one that keeps circling around. I don't know exactly where or how, but it circles around in my mind a little bit. So paying attention to that might be something there.
Yeah, awesome.
I don't know what you were asking about in terms of, I realized I've talked a long time and didn't know the question. But in terms of what makes me happy,
yeah, and then just noticing what
my kids and
yeah,
supporting Robert and all of that.
yeah. Well, so if you were going to encourage type 3s coming up, and we're trying to give away your wisdom to them before they, in which case they probably won't use it until they learned it themselves. But what do you, anything you wish you would have heard when you were growing up that could have helped you, and even what's it like to be a leader as a female in the world, and what did you have to go through around that, and running into some hardy 8s from time to time who were grumpy, and I mean, just so that it's a convoluted question, but because you're creative and complex yourself, I'm sure you'll come up with an answer.
Well, I wouldn't know how to deliver the message. I'll be clear about that.
Yeah.
Because if I would be delivering it nonstop. I'm not sure how to deliver the message, but I think it really comes down to issues as blessings. So seeing, I just imagine that this obstacle before me in my path is there not to hold me back or not to cause me pain, but is an opportunity to learn something. And when I learn that, I'm going to know how to expand into my full potential.
Yeah.
Right. So issues as blessings.
Yeah.
And I think that's the one that changed everything. So the big burly 8 screaming and yelling with a neck vein popping. Yeah, we're talking deer in the headlight. Just non-functional. And when I spent time to find the self-judgment, there was this little voice inside of me, I'm just a girl. And if you'd asked me if I felt that way, I would have said no, would have denied it, but there was a belief inside of me, something called just a girl.
Yeah.
And when I could extract that and, bring in, what I have to offer has value, and many people would see that and welcome that. What showed up in my path was different.
Yeah.
So I look at when we've learned something from the issue, the big burly man with the neck vein popping, it doesn't show up anymore. I think it's been 20 years since a burly man with a neck vein popping showed up in my life.
Yeah.
And before that, a lot. So the big thing is these are gifts, and learn now or learn it later.
Yeah.
And once we learn it, we move on to something else. Yeah. So I think it's that idea to greet the issue, to look to say, what is it that this is giving me the opportunity to learn? And when I learn that, I will expand into my full potential.
And beautiful. One of the ways that get expressed in the Enneagram world and all of that is if it's in the way, it's on the way.
There you go.
Right. So
smooth, Michael. Very smooth.
It's in the way, it's on the way. So and Yeah,
That
and I
could
also,
be a future Nirvana nugget.
there you go. And the other thing I think I just wanted to point that I really, you know, the book you wrote, I thought uh, really captured the whole conversation clarity around emotional intelligence,
Mm.
and did it in a very palpable, clear, and hands-on way. And I just appreciated that, and I just wanted to put it in an advertisement for
Ah,
that
Mr.
book.
Sweet.
Yeah, and tell me the name of it again.
It's The Path to Corporate Nirvana,
Yes, yes,
the relationship age framework.
yes,
So
yeah.
it's this idea that we went through the industrial age, the Agrarian age, industrial age,
Hmm.
the information age, and now an invitation into the relationship age.
Yeah.
And sort of, you know, as somebody said, I should have titled it The Corporate Path to Nirvana. That would have been more accurate. I kind of like that.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's just this idea that when we, you know, move past the drama and trauma and into the ease and grace, it just takes a willingness to, as you said, if it's in the way, it's on the way.
Yeah.
You know, a willingness to cooperate and learn, and sort of being willing to share some of my painful learnings even, you know, just as like, okay, it's just learning,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, and I've always appreciated the way you've, and I use this a lot now too, is when someone notices a pattern that's bothering them, and you would say, well, great to notice. Good that you noticed, which is really true. Like, you noticed it. That's awesome. That gives you something right there. So
Yeah.
the kind of optimism around noticing challenges and reframing them as an opportunity rather than a failure. And I think
Yes.
that's really something you do quite well. So anyway.
Probably the best reward was when one client said to me, you know, when you're not here, we all look at each other and say, who's going to talk Judith?
Oh, that's
So
great.
just to give people permission to talk in a way maybe that they haven't talked is really
Yeah,
how I see it, and
yeah,
look at things in a different way, like you're talking about, Michael,
yeah,
is, you know, where it's at.
yeah. It's awesome. Awesome. Well, anything else you'd like to add about the three story that is on your mind right now?
Only that I really appreciate the work that you're doing and sort of the depth of your understanding of each type,
Mm,
and how how effectively you honor those patterns while still, you know, staying curious about how to move out of the trap of the pattern. You know, so I've learned a lot from you, Michael, and I'm really grateful for that. So,
well, thank you. That means a lot. Thank you. Touches me very much. Well, gosh, on that note, I just send you many blessings,
thank you, Michael.
and I'm going to stop the recording and see what we